Hey, what's going on? Well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and skip the intro and let's just go ahead and get into it, shall we? Um, I was looking at the channel. It's Stalingrad Battle Data is the name of the channel that had the video. I downloaded it so it's easier to watch. But they did a great video showing the road to Berlin. Ignore that. Ignore that. And let's go ahead and that's going all right. It's going all right, y'all. Let's go ahead and share. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. Video file, and it should be. Oops. Did I already put it away? I think I did. Oh, poopy. Hold on then. Give me just a moment, everyone. There we go. Oh, poopy, and it just goes to the. Okay, sorry. Okay, just a moment, everyone. Autonomous region, body cam, footage. No. Revolution. No trash. What's it? Was sorry about that. Shoot. Oh, the road to Berlin. Okay, so it's okay. So it's down towards the bottom. All right. So, all right. I'm sorry. I'm just being a boomer. I should have taken care of it here. I'm trying to keep the noise level up. There we go. And enemy are surviving the last. Okay, here we go. The road to Berlin. Okay, here we go. Found it. Whoops. Added to the stream. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a pretty good video, like I say. I'm just gonna watch it. I want to promote a little bit of Stalingrad Battle Data. They do have 20,000 followers. I think this is a great video nonetheless. So let's go ahead and watch this a little bit.
General, I've been in the wilds of Hungary. I know almost nothing about Army Group Vistula, what it's composed of, and what the situation is on the Oder.
These have to be thrown back. No matter what happens elsewhere, the Russians must be contained on the Oder. It's our only hope.
Who prepared this rubbishy road? Whoever he is, he should be committed to a lunatic asylum.
The troops of the 1st Belarusian Front.
Stalingrad Battle Data. Let me go ahead. I'll go ahead and put their link in the description. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. Sorry. Okay, so here is the link right there. Okay, there's their link to their channel, and let me go ahead and find the specific video. This is a recent video that they just put out. I'll go ahead and put that up. I think it's, like I say, I think it's a very good video nonetheless, I think. So I'll go ahead and put that up there. Yep, it is Tick. Yep, you are right, Redendonian, you are. And while I don't, and I will say this, I don't agree with Tick because he promotes a lot of his libertarian nonsense politics. He still does good work. I'll put it that way. I haven't seen his content because I just, on principle, I don't want to deal with him. But overall, he does put out good work. I'll put it that way. You can feel as you want to about how he acts personally, but yeah, nonetheless. But let's go ahead and get into it, shall we?
Front are ready to march in 2 weeks, and it is obvious that Konyev's 1st Ukrainian Front will finish its preparations for the same time. We will take Berlin, and we will take it before the Allies.
When is it planned to launch an offensive in the Berlin direction?
Okay, so we'll go ahead and see here. So Lewis from Tick and Thorsten Manfred for the narration. Okay, so there's the primary sources. Let's see here. Bertrand 500. Okay, and then you have other stuff. Yeah, Soviet General Staff at War. You got other stuff. Yeah, phony Russian accent. Keck, exactly. A Tick's content mate is a mixed bag, but his video on fascism slightly better than breadsticks with saying much. Yeah, like I said, that is fair. That's fair. Like I say, Tick. Oh shit, sorry. Sorry. I'm just skipping ahead here. Okay, so they do all the.
When is it planned to launch an offensive in the Berlin direction?
That's some good quick cuts there. I like that. Okay, so there we go. Anton Joey.
Germany, 1945.
Okay.
Many things have been said about the deteriorated German war machine in the last.
Yeah, the running gaga said he should stick to talking about tanks. Yeah, he really needs to stop talking about.
But so look, shows the situation was not altogether catastrophic. Some aspects were bad indeed, while others were not so. Manpower was obviously the main concern. The losses in 1944 had surpassed by far all previous years. Only 800,000 conscripts could be incorporated into the army this year, the lowest number since the beginning of the war, whereas twice that number was necessary to replace full strength the divisions already deployed at the front.
Yeah, they do talk about it a little bit more, but I will explain. So June 22nd, 1944, the Soviets launched Operation Migration, or Bagration, depending on your pronunciation, towards mainly Army Group Center. By this point, the Kurland pocket and what's left of Army Group North is already trapped up in there, which they do talk about. Army Group South pretty much doesn't exist, pretty much since 1943. The campaign going to the, retreating from the Kuban. And other things as well. I mean, there were other campaigns in between there. They had really lost, the Axis powers. The German Wehrmacht had really lost their strength here. But yeah, let's continue.
The deficit is not only in quantity, but also in quality. Not only are the new recruits either underaged or overaged, but they are also completely inexperienced. Foreign nationals are also incorporated into the Wehrmacht. And since it is hardly possible to fill up the ranks in the army, there is no way to do so for the interior either. To raise a national militia, the Volkssturm, of people aged 18 to 65 officially, even beyond the age.
Yep.
Guy Sayeux, a Frenchman of a German.
This is footage from the last Die Wochenschau that was presented, which was number 755, I believe, which was in, I believe it's March or April of 1945. So this is the last bit of footage you'll ever see. Like I say, there is some footage out there on YouTube where you can find footage from the German Democratic Republic that they found. And for those that have seen it, basically they show a clip of a man from Silesia, basically from what is now Poland, who speaks more of a Silesian language, more specific, kind of I'm not sure what you would say. And yeah, it basically just showed that this guy was basically slave labor. And it's just kind of how tough things really were at that point. But yeah, let's carry on.
Mother, who served in the Großdeutschland division, the 1st Battalion of the Volkssturm he met. Some of them, stooped with arched legs and profuse wrinkles, 60 years, wore the Feldgrau with a Mauser on their shoulder. But even more surprising were the young people. It was really about children who rubbed shoulders with these old men with sad looks.
Yeah. The thing is, by 1944, we all know that Germany was in a bad place. But this is when the Volkssturm was really brought up, and it was just kind of, I think once again it kind of points to the fact that the Nazis tried to just copy the more popular Marxist-Leninist movements as much as possible. So they tried to create this army of peasants and artisans, I guess you could say, much the same way as Lenin tried to promote. And it didn't really work out that way, because you were supposed to do that from the beginning, not when you're about to be invaded by the Soviets. So, yeah.
Children, the oldest of which was barely 16, but I'm not lying when I say that some were barely 13 years old. They had been hastily dressed in used uniforms intended for men, and armed with a rifle, sometimes as large as themselves. Some laughed and heckled, completely forgetting the military education, impossible given their age, that they had been taught in barely 3 weeks. Many of them carried in their school bag, recently emptied of all school items, some provisions or clothes stuffed inside by the mother's hand.
Yeah.
Sacca and sweets were even exchanged, granted by the food distribution to those under 13. Between 5 and 10 million people are theoretically eligible for the Volkssturm, but far fewer actually end up being recruited, about 400,000. Yet who knows what could have happened had Hitler's government been allowed to pursue his criminal policies for a longer time.
Now, I want to bring this up as just a side note, that a lot of Catholics, a lot of the traditional Catholics, when I remember, would bring up the aspect of, well, the Catholics were against this and everything else, that Catholic priests in Poland were put in concentration camps as well. And that's true. And I think that they will point out that, say that they were a strong resistance against Hitler's regime. Now, of course, I mean, there's a lot of subterfuge about that. Then, of course, you can say, but Pope Pius XIII was in on it and all this sort of thing. So it's just, or Pope Pius XII. You know what? I'm getting myself mistaken. Anyway, the Pope was in on it. Look at, the rat lines and everything. So there's a lot of subterfuge there. But just saying that as an off topic.
So yes, it is true that in 1945, manpower is scarcer than ever. And yes, it is also true that the entire German economy is on the brink of collapse. The Reich is severely lacking resources, fuel most of all. The OKW reported, in January, we have 50,000 tons of gasoline fuel against 185,000 tons last August, down to 28%. There are 12,000 tons of aircraft fuel compared to 200,000 tons in the previous May. The numbers say it all. And yet, despite...
We did have some priests that were against it. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like I say, I think another aspect, too, to mention this is that Romania, once Ploiești, I hope I'm pronouncing that right from the Romanians in there, when Ploiești was bombed, and of course, by this point, 1944, Romania had already switched sides. The puppet government had already been taken out. So, I mean, pretty much by this point, everything was getting overrun. Hungary, of course, they tried to hold out with Operation Spring Awakening around Lake Balaton. Failed miserably, and it was considered the SS's Stalingrad in many ways. They had been pushed back. They tried to produce just synthetic oil with coal, and it just wasn't working. I mean, that's all you can really say. We're trying to do it from a pragmatic point of view. We're not trying to praise any system or another, but yeah, just an interesting point of view.
The shortages and the rampant disorganization, weapons remain relatively abundant and are of excellent quality. These levels could only be maintained by extensive use of slave labor, an enormous quantity of young men and women from all over Europe, most of all from the Soviet Union, forced to work in harsh conditions in German factories.
Now, to be fair, there was sabotage that did occur. and there were little mistakes, but I think that this is kind of, I don't know. It's difficult to say, nonetheless.
Just like industry, agriculture is also relying on forced labour. French POWs have become a usual sight in German farms since 1940, and goods and raw materials can...
Another thing to bring up with slave labor, if y'all have seen the original version of The Bridge, the German movie, The Bridge, you'll notice at the beginning it starts off with this kind of a Junker sort of family, and you'll see the Soviet prisoner is bringing a cart in for the family to take care of. I can't remember the name of the character offhand, but basically the kids that would later go on to defend this bridge, they're like, why don't you just retreat? You know, everyone's trying to tell these kids, why don't you just retreat? And of course they fought, you know, as hard as they could, but of course they got killed by the Americans and everything. Pretty good movie, like I say, for what it is. I haven't seen the remake, but the original is pretty good. I'm one of those snobs. I think it's like 1956 or something like that. I'm not sure, but anywho.
Continue coming in from all still occupied countries.
West Germany did a lot of movies to try to soften the image of the Third Reich and everything else like that, to try to make it, you know, to try to clean it up a little bit. Now, of course, you know, the GDR made much more harsh films and much more, you know, showing, you know, the legacy of fascism, this and that. So, yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's a good contrast to say the least. But yeah, let's continue.
As a result, by the beginning of 1945, the Heer, German ground forces, has over 4,000 Sturmgeschütz, 1,600 Mark IVs, 2,000 Panthers, 400 Tigers, and 1,400 Jagdpanzer. Even the Luftwaffe is nowhere near as badly off as has often been written. On January 10, it still has 2,500 fighters and 1,000 ground attack aircraft. These figures will allow the Wehrmacht to perform relatively well in this prelude to the last stage of the war. But then, very quickly, the deficit in pilots and fuel was to ground all the remaining aircraft and to immobilize the brand new heavy panzers. So let's have a closer look at the composition of 1st and infantry.
This is very, very good, very detailed. I wanted to say this as another thing. I'm just trying to add my little bit of commentary here. That way I don't seem like I'm just letting the video run. I remember the first time I really got into this. It's one of those that show Battlefield with the British guy doing the commentary. And they were talking about the contrast between the Battle of the Bulge versus this over here, to say, well, if things worked over here, and that if they had captured Antwerp, allegedly, then things would have been better and we would have shifted and everything else like that. This is what a lot of the wereboos probably say and whatnot. But yeah, it probably wouldn't have occurred this way, but a lot of folks try to say it that way. They try to sell that.
Infantry division and then a panzer division at this time, and to compare it to what it was before, when the Wehrmacht was at its best. Firstly, a typical infantry division. In early 1945, it was composed like this: the headquarters and headquarter company, 3 infantry regiments, each 2 infantry battalions, instead of 3 as they were in 41, each of 3 companies, plus a machine gun company, a pioneer company, an anti-tank company, and a heavy weapons company. An anti-tank battalion with 8 towed 75mm pack guns, plus a flak company with 8 anti-aircraft guns. A tank destroyer company with 10 Hetzer. A rifle battalion with heavy machine guns and mortars. An artillery regiment with 40 horse-drawn howitzers. A communications battalion. A pioneer battalion with 2 companies, one of them motorized, and the usual replacement battalion, medical services, logistics, etc. There were about 1,300 men per regiment, 30 officers, and 300 NCOs. In total, a significant force of 10,000 men, 6,000 of whom would actually fight. Around 500 machine guns, 60 field guns, 40 anti-tank guns, 60 heavy mortars, 36 Panzerschrecks, 24 anti-aircraft guns, 30 tank
Yeah.
destroyers, and around 2,000 horses.
Yeah.
The last part is important, for in the last stage of the war, the German infantry divisions still relied above all on horses for logistics, even more than in the first stage in 1939. January 1945 sees
No
a
gas.
record figure of 1 million horses used directly at the front.
Wow.
And the divisions of the last waves, formed between January and April 1945, each have more non-motorized transport, 3,600 horses, 1,600 carts,
Wow.
and 1,500 bicycles.
Yeah.
Whereas there are fewer motor vehicles.
That's
One-
funny to see an officer there, with in amongst everybody doing that.
130 motorcycles, 150 light vehicles, and 200 trucks. Now let's consider a typical Panzer division. There are 15,000 men, including 380 officers and 3,200 NCOs, an exceptionally high staff ratio compared to that of the infantry. A headquarters and headquarters company, 1 regiment of tanks, 2 regiments of grenadiers, of artillery with 105 and 150 mm guns, communications battalion, a pioneer battalion. These were equipped with 45 Mark IVs, 45 Panthers, 20 Jagdpanzer Hetzer, 30 pack 75 mm guns, 12 pack 88 mm flak guns, 60 flak 30 mm, 50 heavy mortars, 40 field guns of 105 and 155 mm. One of the grenadier regiments is carried on half-tracks, the other on trucks. A terrible firepower in theory, but for how long will this strength remain in reality?
Yeah. That wasn't even half of a lot of the stuff,
The strategic situation in 1941. On January
Right.
1st,
See, little mistakes like that. He meant 1945. I know, but yeah.
1945, both the Western Allies on the Rhine and the Red Army on the Vistula are the same distance from Berlin, about 500 kilometers. But then, on 12 January, the Red Army launches 2 of the most gigantic military operations in human history, never equaled in scale before or since. Within 3 weeks, 3 Soviet fronts seize East Prussia, destroying army groups sent at the time 6 months after the Operation Bagration had already done it once, and advance through Poland from the Vistula to the Oder, shattering Army Group A in the process.
I want to talk about this just for a brief moment because I understand that they want to talk specifically about the Battle of Berlin because there's so much to cover. I wanted to cover just into this. The battles of Kustrin and places like Breslau, of course, it's now known as I'm not sure how Wrocław in Poland. These were all considered German cities. They had been, in the hands of the German Empire for, I think, something like 200 or 300 years. And of course, people consider it's Poland now, and people will say it was always Poland. But a lot of folks, these battles were awful, particularly Breslau, where they blew up a lot of buildings and everything else like that to create this airfield. And they were continually attacked by, the Sturmovic's and everything else like that. Awful, awful battle. This was, these were some of the more awful battles that occurred. And of course, they made them Festungen as well. Same thing with Königsberg as well. Of course, Königsberg is still in the hands today of the Russians, and it's still seen as a prize. I think. I'm not sure. I know someone made a video about it, but it's just like basically, I think it's just more of an FU to Germany. To still hold. I can't think. Kaliningrad. That's it. Kaliningrad in the hands of Russia, much the same way as as Karelia is still part of Russia as well, much to the dismay of the Finns. To a point, like I say, I'm not sitting here and making them look good. I'm just saying that as an off topic, as they say. Let's go ahead and let it play.
By 15 February, the gigantic Soviet offensive has propelled the Red Army to the Oder, 50 kilometers from the capital. whereas American and British troops are still struggling in the far reaches of Germany. Pressed by his generals, Hitler finally agrees to perform a dramatic shift of forces from the western to the eastern front.
All right.
By 15 March, the situation changed from a relatively well-balanced one between western and eastern fronts.
Be careful, Southern Circle.
Different...
Be careful, buddy. Yeah, I have food poisoning. Oh, boy. Well, Bacon, you go ahead and lay down. It's okay. You don't have to watch this. It'll be on again. You know, you just try to get better. You know? Anyway. But yeah, let's continue.
Where the
Sorry about that, Southern Circle, though. I hope you do feel okay.
better part of the German forces are deployed on the Oder front facing the Soviets. So let's have a closer look at the situation in the east at the time our series on the final battle begins. 4 German army groups, including 12 armies, hold a 2,000-kilometer front, extending from Courland in the Baltic to Lake Balaton in Hungary. These forces are about half those available for the invasion of the USSR 4 years previously. They are now totaling 1,600,000 men, 1,000 tanks, 2,000 assault guns, and less than 1,000 aircraft. Only half this strength in manpower is facing west. The main part of the German forces in the east is regrouped in an army group on the Vistula, German Heeresgruppe Weichsel, formed in late January from elements that could be saved from destruction in Army Group A, Army Group Center, and from an assortment of rebuilt and new units. Army Group Vistula was to become Germany's last major force and the Reich's last line of defense, who was by now head of OKH, intended to propose Field Marshal von Weichs as commander of the new army group. However, Hitler's desire to transfer control of the conflict from the
Lord have mercy. Be careful, Southern Circle.
Wehrmacht to the SS prompted him to appoint Himmler as commander instead. Himmler, who lacked any military knowledge, proved inadequate to the task and was
They act like it's a speedway out there. I'll give it a minute. All right, I think that's done. All right.
Placed by General Heinrizi on the 20th of March. Contrary to Himmler, who excelled only in crimes against humanity, Heinrizi, highly experienced officer and among the most humane commanders in the Wehrmacht. Although he was forced to withdraw his 1st Panzer Army from Hungary to Czechoslovakia, Heinrizi had contested the ground so tenaciously that on 3 March he was informed that he had been decorated with the swords to the oath of his knight, a remarkable accomplishment for a man who was disliked so intensely by Hitler. And now he was rushing to Zossen, the headquarters, with orders to take over command of the strategically important Army Group Vistula. The meeting between Guderian and Heinrizi at Zossen region, 20 March 1945. The meeting between Heinrizi and Guderian at Zossen has been...
Okay. Here's another point that has to be mentioned. The last battle, Cornelius Ryan, interestingly enough, as far as I know, not been made a movie out of. Bridge Too Far has been made a movie into. The Longest Day made into a movie. Last Battle has never been made into a movie. There have been plenty of European movies. German, of course, you know, talking about Der Untergang, you know, the downfall, you know, showing Hitler and everything else like that with the final battle. You'll see other movies about that as well, and plenty of Soviet movies, I'm sure. And, you know, of course, just Russian movies too, to this day. But this one hasn't. Another side note, of course, is that Heinrizi helped to write a lot of this book with Cornelius Ryan. He was a huge resource in this book being written. Of course, Heinrizi was not the official commander of Berlin. Helmut Wiedling was the actual commander. I'm just saying that as an off topic. I'm just showing off at this point. Sorry, but yeah, just saying.
Depicted in detail by Cornelius Ryan in The Last Battle. It is extremely informative and revealing of the psychological climate of those days in the high spheres of German power. The supreme headquarters of the German army, a few kilometers south of Berlin, had been recently bombed and some buildings were badly damaged. The first person Heinrici saw was General Krebs, Guderian's chief of staff, who had been injured in the raid. Monocle rammed in his right eye, he sat behind a desk in an office close to Guderian's, his head wrapped in a large white turban of bandages. Heinrici did not care much for Krebs. Though the chief of staff was extremely intelligent, Heinrici saw him as a man who refused to believe the truth, who could change black and white so as to minimize the true situation.
What's going on, Punjabify? We're watching this video about the Battle of Berlin.
For Hitler.
Yeah. Krebs was pretty much not well liked by a lot of folks. I think that Krebs was one of these guys, as the video says, was somebody that was holding on to the end. Spoke Russian, this and that, but he was just seen as meh, really. But yeah.
Heinrici looked at him, foregoing the niceties, and asked abruptly, "What happened to you?" Krebs shrugged. "Oh, it was nothing," he replied. "Nothing." Krebs had always been unperturbable. Before the war, he had been military attaché at the German embassy in Moscow, and he spoke near perfect Russian. After the signing of the Russo-Japanese Neutrality Pact in 1941, which the German diplomat helped to achieve, Stalin had embraced Krebs, saying, "We shall always be friends." Krebs mentioned to Heinrici that he was still learning Russian. "Every morning," he said, "I place a dictionary on a shelf beneath..."
Oh, you didn't miss that much. We're just still going over the video here. They're just laying the characters out. Basically, General Heinrici, the commander of Army Group Vistula, is about to talk to General Heinz Guderian. And they're going to be talking about the situation and just kind of commiserating basically about the situation that they're in.
The mirror, and while shaving, learn a few more Russian words. Heinrici nodded. Krebs might find his Russian useful soon. Everyone sat immaculately dressed in shining high boots, well-cut and well-pressed field grey uniforms, with red tabs of staff rank at the collar. Among them, Heinrici stood out of place, with the fur collar sheepskin that never left him. As Heinrici entered the office, Guderian rose from his desk, warmly greeted the visitor, and offered him a chair. Heinrici saw that Guderian was tense and edgy, broad-shouldered, with thinning grey hair and a straggling moustache. He seemed much older than his 56 years. The creator of Hitler's panzer forces, the general whose armoured techniques had brought about the capture of France and who had nearly succeeded in accomplishing as much in Russia, found himself almost completely powerless now. Even as chief of the general staff, he had virtually no influence over Hitler. A hot-tempered officer at the best of times,
My opinion on Rommel. I think Erwin Rommel is somebody that ultimately he played the game, I would say. People like Rommel just knew how to play the game enough to make it so that he wasn't implicated. Like I said, he was never involved in, Operation Barbarossa or any of those, the crimes that went on there. He was known for being very polite to the enemy, this and that. And of course, the capture of Indian troops in particular led to the creation of things like the Tiger Battalion, or the Tiger Brigade, I should say, that was used to try to attack Kojima, I believe, and to try to attack the British and try to create more of a thing there with Nataji. I'm trying to think of his name now, but yeah, basically, I think Rommel was somebody who would have been seen just as bad as everybody else. But yeah, that's my view of it. I'm trying to think of it now. Yeah, Chandra Bose. That's it. Yeah. And a lot of those, like I say, he commanded the ANI. And of course, the thing is with Chandra Bose, there's a lot to be said. Oh, he died in Taiwan, apparently. Huh. I had no, yeah. British Raj. Let me see here. He's kind of interesting, of course, because he, yeah, let's see here. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of it. Yeah, Indian Legion. Okay, yeah. made up of 4,500 soldiers. So yeah, the Free India Center in Berlin and created the Indian Legion. Yeah, the Indian Legion was attached to the Wehrmacht and later transferred to the Waffen-SS. Its members swore the following allegiances to Hitler and boast, "I swear by God this holy oath that I will obey the leader of the German race and state, Adolf Hitler, and as the commander of the German armed forces in the fight for India, whose leader is Subhas Chandra Bose." But yeah, this oath clearly abrogates control of the Indian Legion to the German armed forces, spearheaded by the Azad Hind Legion. There we go. But yeah. And of course, there's a lot to be said for his daughter, of course, Anita Bose Pfaff, who, of course, because he had a German wife. But yeah, one of those types of things, yeah. It's okay, Temujin. It's okay. It's all good.
Guderian was now so thwarted that he was subject to violent rages. As they talked, Heinrich looked about him. The office was Spartan, a large map table, several straight-back chairs, 2 phones, a green lampshade on the desk, and nothing on the yellow beige walls, except the usual framed picture of Hitler over the map table. The chief of the general staff did not even have an easy chair. Though Guderian and Heinrich were not intimate friends, they had known each other for years, respected each other's professional competence, and were close enough to converse freely and informally. As soon as they got down to business, Heinrich spoke frankly. "General, I've been in the wilds of Hungary. I know almost nothing about Army Group Vistula, what it's composed of, and what the situation is on the Oder." Guderian was equally blunt. Briskly he replied,
"I should tell you that Hitler didn't want to give you this command. He had somebody else in mind. I was responsible. I told Hitler that you were the one man needed. At first, he wouldn't consider you at all. Finally, I got him to agree."
Guderian spoke in a businesslike, matter-of-fact fashion. But as he warmed to his subject, the tone of his voice changed.
"Himmler? That was the biggest problem. Getting rid of the man you're to replace, Himmler."
Bitterly, Guderian recounted how in January, as the Polish front began to collapse before the tidal weight of the Red Army, he had desperately urged the formation of Army Group Vistula. To command the group, Guderian had suggested Field Marshal von Weichs.
At that time, Weichs was just...
Yeah, voice acting 100, exactly. Okay, so I want to clear up something here, and I could be wrong. So, chat, please correct me. But as far as I know, with Army Group Vistula, it was given in the hands of Himmler. But Himmler passed it off to Ferdinand Schörner, the Field Marshal. So I think I could be. Let me double check here. Let me check my history here a little bit and make sure. Yeah, because I think Ferdinand Schörner was the one who was on Army Group Vistula, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Let me see here. Let me see. Army Group North, Army Group Center. Okay, Army Group Kurland. Okay, where he stayed until January 1945. When he was made Army Commander of Army Group Center, defending Czechoslovakia and the upper reaches of the River Oder. Huh. Well, that's weird. On 4 April 1945, Schörner was promoted to Field Marshal and was named as the new Commander-in-Chief of the German Army High Command. He nominally served his post until the surrender of the Third Reich, May 1945. The thing is that Schörner, from what I heard, just basically left. He had ordered all these killings of anybody that, deserted this and that, but then he dressed up in traditional, Bavarian clothes and shook the hands of his staff and then said, see you later. I mean, basically, as far as I know, that's basically what he did. So, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, there's a lot of characters in this cast that you have to kind of be aware of, but yeah.
Just the man for the situation. So, what happened? Hitler said Weichs was too old. Jodl was present at the conference and I expected him to support me, but he made some remark about Weichs' religious feelings, and that ended the matter. Then, whom did we get? Hitler appointed Himmler. Of all people, Himmler.
Guderian had argued and pleaded against the appalling and preposterous appointment of this man who had no military knowledge, but Hitler remained adamant. Guderian went on thundering.
Under Himmler, the front had all but collapsed. The Red Army had moved exactly as was predictable. Once the Russians were across the Vistula, part of their forces swung north, reached the Baltic at Danzig, cutting off and encircling over 20 divisions in East Prussia alone. The remaining Soviet army sliced through Pomerania, Silesia, then they reached the Oder and Neisse rivers. Everywhere along the eastern front our line was overwhelmed, but no sector had collapsed so fast as Himmler's. His incompetence had opened the gates to the main drive across Germany, and it had placed Berlin in
failed the
jeopardy.
boomer check. Exactly,
Hitler finally relieved the overworked, overburdened Reichsführer, but only after a lot of grumbling and with obvious reluctance.
Yeah.
Guderian paused, but only for a moment.
Heinrich, esoteric, pagan, vocation, exactly. Yeah, like I say, yeah. Basically, it showed, like I say, I'm reading this book about Kusterin a little bit, and it's just like, it shows just how unprepared they were, to take care of this. We saw that, they were like, just little units here and there, but nobody told them anything, and nobody knew what was going on, which led to the capture of places like Kusterin and Königsberg and Breslau, which is some of the bigger cities were considered, that were untouched by bombing, this and that, which of course were later pretty much just, destroyed and rebuilt. And although you can find elements of German culture there, they are now Polish. And of course, a lot of people would say that they are Polish. So, take it for what it is.
His recital of disdain punctuated by bursts of anger. Now he flared again.
The mess we're in is fantastic. The way the war is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Through the previous months, we had tried to get Hitler to understand that the real danger lay on the Eastern Front, and that drastic measures were necessary. We urged a series of strategic withdrawals from the Baltic, particularly from...
It's a good point Mugen made about a lot of generals weren't ideological Nazis. They just went along. That's true, because there was something that a lot of folks didn't see. I remember seeing this in a bit, or in a Wikipedia article, but there was a slush fund for German army generals where it's just like, basically, people like even Guderian were promised, Himmler, the esoteric pagan, should have been the one to have been purged, not Gregor Strasser, R.I.P. Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, too, is that, the slush fund included a villa that Heinz Guderian had and other big-name generals. So it was a way to pay them off, basically. So in terms of just their pension, there was also a way to pay that back as well. Yeah. Gongol, I think, was opposed to Nazism, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah, Goering should have been purged too. Yeah, definitely.
Poland and from the Balkans, and even suggested abandoning Norway and Italy. Everywhere lines needed shortening, each division relieved could be spared.
Exactly.
Front. According to intelligence, the Russians had twice as many divisions as the Western Allies, yet there were fewer German divisions fighting in the East than the West, and the best divisions were fighting Eisenhower. But Hitler refused. On the defensive, he would not believe the facts and figures.
On January 9, Guderian had told Hitler that the Russians could be expected to launch their attack from the Baltic to the Balkans with a great force totaling some 225 divisions and 22 armoured corps. The situation estimate had been prepared by General Galen, the Chief of Intelligence. It indicated that the Russians would outnumber the...
Galen, of course, would later go on to be part of the West German and set up the West German BND. But yeah, the fascist claims that Himmler was a good Christian boy. Exactly. Yeah. He was not a Catholic. Yeah. The fascist is kind of cringe in that way. Like I say, I think that's kind of ridiculous. What I was going to say to this, though, is there was really no way to really defend against this onslaught. And the thing is, I'll say this as a side note, but Czechoslovakia erupted in, particularly the Prague uprising. They came about, and the Germans they could not handle it, and of course, a lot of the ethnic Germans that were in Czechoslovakia were killed and were forced out. I'm not going to sit here and be ignorant about it, but what happened, happened. I'll put it that way. It's not that Hyperborea shit's strange, yeah.
Germans in infantry by 11 to 1, in armour by 7 to 1, in both artillery and aircraft by at least 20 to 1. Hitler hit the table and announced in a frenzy the author of the report. "Who prepared this rubbish?" he roared. "Whoever he is, he should be committed to a lunatic asylum." Guderian retorted angrily, saying that since he personally fully trusts this data, then he should be sent for a psychiatric examination. Hitler categorically refused all requests to withdraw the troops manning the defences at the Vistula and East Prussia fronts to more advantageous positions. He also insisted that 200,000 German soldiers trapped in the Courland Peninsula stay there and did not allow their evacuation by sea to protect the borders of the Reich. Guderian, who was disgusted with this ostrich strategy of Hitler's headquarters, asked for a vacation. "The Eastern Front," the Führer suddenly said, trying to calm him down, "has never before had such powerful reserves as it does now. This is your merit, and I thank you for that." Guderian objected.
The Eastern Front looks like a house of cards, and if the front is broken in one place, then everything else will collapse.
The irony of the situation was that
It's still weak. It really is.
1941 about the Red Army.
Yeah, it really is.
3 days later, the Red Army attacked, and Galen was proved right. Guderian told Heinrizi,
"The front virtually collapsed, simply because most of our panzer forces..."
I have a series of books in PDF called Lebensraum, written by Nazi Mennonite. Wow. This shows that the Black Army Division didn't wreck them hard enough. Oh, wow. Mennonites, huh? Holy moly. Oh, wow. That's nuts. The EU is Lebensraum too. Don't tell the Germans, though. It really is, yeah. I've come down to the EU pill, which is that, yeah, the EU is basically just an extension of what Nazi Germany wanted. I've pretty much accepted that, yeah. But yeah, I know that a lot of folks do say that, and I've given in and just said, yeah, it's true.
Down in the West. Finally, Hitler agreed to shift some of the armor.
Mennonites are kind of like, oh man. You know, I'm going to let you go ahead and explain that, shock rayist. Mennonite, I mean, here in the U.S., we think of Mennonites as kind of like, they're close to the, oh man, I'm trying to think of it now. Oh man, let me go ahead and see here. Hold on. Basically, they are Christians, but they're like really out there Christians, basically. Anabaptist. Okay, so they're Baptists. Okay. Or Anabaptist. Simons, I should say. Okay, I'm trying to think of it because yeah, they're very much, they're usually next to the, not the Quakers, the, oh man. Okay, I'm trying to think of it now. It's going to bug the hell out of me. Quakers, Huguenots. It's going to bug the hell out of me if I don't think about it, because I know. But yeah, I'm going to let you, yeah. Amish, that's it. Yeah, the Amish, yeah. Amish, but less so. Yeah, they use some technology. Yeah, basically, yeah. That's basically it. They're basically kind of like the Amish. Yeah, that's what I was going to go with.
But he would not let me use the tanks to attack the Russian spearheads east of Berlin. Where did he send them? To Hungary, where they were thrown into a perfectly useless attack to recapture the oil fields.
That's true.
Why?
The 6th SS Panzer Army, yeah.
Even now, there are 18 divisions sitting in Berlin, tied down, doing nothing. They are needed here, not in the Baltics, if we're going to survive.
Oh, they were a sect that splitted from the Anabaptists. They're normally very progressive in their Christian views, but some who settled in Eastern Europe became petty bourgeois. Oh, okay.
Everything has got to be on the Oder front.
Guderian paused, and with an effort calmed himself. Then he said,
"The Russians are looking down our throats. They've halted their offensive to reorganize and regroup. We estimate that you'll have 3 to 4 weeks to prepare until the floods go again. In that time, the Russians will try to establish new bridgeheads on the western bank and broaden those they already have. These have to be thrown back. No matter what happens elsewhere, the Russians must be contained on the Oder. It's our only hope.
Okay.
We've reviewed the situation of the Wehrmacht in 1945. We've also had an overview of the Soviet strategic operations that ended up on the Oder at the gates of Berlin. And finally, we saw how the German command prepared the last line of defense. Now let's review the state of the Red Army at this time and see what kind of troops were used in those giant operations that ended up so successfully. But first, a word about a 50-year-old legend that we'll try to debunk. The controversies of the German defeat. History is written by the victors, as the saying goes, and yet the German-Soviet war contradicts this fact. In the West, it was the defeated Germans who wrote the history of their fight against the Red Army. Their prejudices, their unending search for excuses and alibis have shaped.
A lot of the German generals did do that because they did it to save themselves, but they also did it to promote the anti-communist ideology. They wanted to be able to fight the Soviet Union. So yeah, it served two purposes. That's the whole idea of it. They were shaping history as they saw it.
The perception and judgment of Westerners on the real value of the Red Army. The defeated generals of the Ostheer have always emphasized their tactical superiority, which isn't generally fair, but which also shows that they did not grasp the reasons for their defeat in the East. What good is it to have one after another of tactical victories, to see the results ultimately swallowed up in strategic...
What do I think about the situation between EU, Russia, and Ukraine? Okay. Oh, boy. I think that Ukraine is just going to collapse. I really do. I think that the Ukraine is just going to collapse under the weight of the fact that they have to privatize everything. The corruption that exists is just amazing. I'll go ahead and provide the link. But yeah, I feel like Russia is just going to kind of just step in. Yeah, it's a weird thing. That's what it is. It is. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely weird. But I'll go ahead and provide the link, Yellow 14. Sorry. I have the link here. Let me see here. I'll go ahead and do the... And here somewhere. It's from Stalingrad Battle Data, but I'll go ahead and provide a link to the actual video. Okay. There we go. There we go. That's a link to the video right there. It's going to come up here in a minute. It's taking its sweet time. Jackbox showdown. Okay. Why animal prices will not return? Okay, well, that's something else. Don't worry. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and continue.
Disasters. It was not until the end of the Cold War that a new generation of Western historians brought out a hidden reality. What the Germans believed to be their strength was actually their weakness.
Yep,
and the
no
weakness
problem,
which they found in their enemy actually hid a formidable revolution.
We can, Christian Dissident. Yeah, I've got it bumped up here. So yeah, not a problem. It's queued up already.
Modern war operations. The performances of the Wehrmacht.
How long has it been since a country has ceased to exist? I don't mean population destruction, but whew, man, taken into one or more states. Man, that's a difficult one. That's all right, Christian Dissident. You're all right. Man, that's a difficult one to say. Yeah. There's been a lot. There's been a lot, but yeah. But the state has been taken into one or more states. Whew. Man, that's difficult to say. Yeah, there's a lot of them. I can't think of them all at the moment.
In the initial period of the war, seems so extraordinary that they went straight into the books of military legends. And thus there's now a paradox. Even as Hitler's army suffered total defeat in the Second World War, it still remains to this day, in the eyes of a large public.
Yeah. There's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of them.
The credit of having brought up new and almost magical form of warfare called the Blitzkrieg. On the other hand, the Soviets are placed by common opinion in the opposite situation. They may well have won the war. They may have won 20 major battles since Stalingrad, and yet doubt, suspicion, or even contempt still too often cling to their military performance.
Yeah.
In this commonly accepted version, the Soviet achievements would be characterized by brutal orders, absence of tactical skill, primacy of numbers, and raw firepower. In reality, if this was true in the beginning of the war, it was certainly not at the end. The world's most powerful army. The Red Army of 1945 has little in common with that of the Red Army of 1941. Gone are the frustrations of the beginning of the war, when soldiers and commanders despaired over complete helplessness, when troops and material were wasted in vain despite the strong will to fight back, when entire Soviet armoured corps were immobilized for lack of fuel and technical deficiencies, when they were heading in the wrong direction for lack of communication, or when they were wiped out before reaching the battlefield, mauled by German aviation acting with complete immunity. Gone are the days when Soviet pilots could do nothing but ram themselves into enemy fighters to take them down. The sky is no longer swarming with Junkers and Messerschmitts, but with Yaks, MiGs and Sturmoviks.
Yep.
The lands are now full of thundering Stalin tanks and super heavy assault artillery, and the Soviet soldiers' morale is at its highest. But just imagine from where they've come from. What an incredible comeback for the Soviet army. Since the summer of 1942, Soviet industry has already won the arms race against Germany, with incomparable production levels. By 1945, it has matured beyond expectations. For over 2 years now, the Ural factories are...
Yeah, there's nothing to argue against here. Yeah, there's nothing to argue against. Absolutely true.
Releasing enormous quantities of high-quality material that perfectly suits the needs of the troops at the front. Tankmen and pilots are now totally confident in the machines they received, which was not always the case before. They have nothing to envy from their German opponents. They know they are as powerful as them, not only in terms of
watching a documentary with my dad the other day about World War II and how the Wehrmacht during the entire war were using super drugs to fight nonstop with no regard to, oh yeah, Pervitin, baby. Oh yeah, that Pervitin. Yeah. With no regard to it. Yeah, exactly. That Pervitin, man. That's some tough stuff, man. That's the original meth. That's OG meth right there. Pervitin gang, I used to be really edgy. And on Twitter, I used to call my handle was Paul Pervitin. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, Pervitin. That's some real ish. I got that book, Blitzed, which talks about Hitler and him taking all these different drugs and everything, and Pervitin, all that stuff. But yeah, wild stuff. There would be SS troops that would just empty out all their ammo and whatnot because they imagined that someone was doing a night attack, and they surrendered because they emptied out all their ammo. Nuts, crazy, wild stuff. But yeah,
abilities, but also in training. They are fully mastering their tanks and aircraft. They have at least as many aces as their enemy. They have all the necessary resources in fuel and ammunition to operate them. American deliveries bring a large complement of ammunition, food supplies, and in particular transport.
Just a note, they did forget the C after large complement, but that's okay. Yeah, they had the juice. Yeah,
equipment. The structures of the unit have also been completely redesigned, and the fighting tactics brought closer to the doctrines of the 1930s. After 3.5 years of an abominable struggle, the Soviet generals have risen to the level of their adversaries. For the first time in the war, the losses in the Ostheer exceed that of the Red Army by about a quarter, from June to September 1944, then by a third between January and May 1945. not to mention the number of prisoners. Although the Red Army tactics remain less flexible
I know.
when it comes to lower level formations,
Sorry about that.
and if the infantry still does not have the same training as the Osttier, the Soviet leaders perform better than the Germans in leading strategic operations. And nothing can compare to artillery.
Yeah.
And still these achievements must not hide the deficiencies of the Red Army that remain even in the late.
Yeah, the Katyushas were much better than Werfers, let's be honest. You know, let's go ahead. I will sing the song because I do like to sing it. It's the only Russian song that I do know, but I'll sing it. I'll sing it just for the chat here. Прочитали яблони груши, попили тумане над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокой берег на окрутой. Выходила, бездну заводила, про степного чистого поля, про того, которого любила, про того, чьи письма берегла. And that's all I know. Okay. I just wanted to do that right quick.
Late stages of the war. So let's continue busting some of the most popular and legends about it, and have a closer look at the alleged sheer numbers and the waves of men that submerged their opponents. 44, the most serious Red Army was undoubtedly that of manpower. In this respect, it is similar to the problem faced by Germany. Losses since 1941 have been so heavy that there are no longer enough men who can populate the 450 infantry divisions deployed at the front.
That there is a German.
In 1945, out of about 12,000 authorized strength, a Soviet division usually counts 5,000 to 7,000 at best. A Soviet infantry corps has hardly the strength in numbers of a British or an American division. Just like in the Wehrmacht, the gaps in the Red Army are compensated by underaged or overage recruits, without real military training, or by formations hastily raised in the reconquered territories with liberators of war and forced labourers freed from German bonds.
Yep.
The appearance of the infantry divisions.
I can say that, yeah, there were, you know, the Polish army, the Romanian army as well that continued to fight, you know, with the Red Army as well. They were pretty much just, yeah, very much continue on to Berlin. Very important, but yeah, let's continue.
Varies a lot. Whereas the Guards keep a martial look, the ordinary divisions are often in bad shape. The are dirty, smashed up. The units are followed by picturesque herds of cows and sheep, horses, donkeys, camels, carts loaded with them.
They are.
And still this relative weakness is compensated by first-rate equipment. A standard 1945 Soviet rifle division has a battalion of 15 Su-60 guns attached, as well as an anti-tank battalion of 66 guns. It's also very well equipped in automatic weapons, 1,500 submachine guns, the excellent PPS-43 and the PPSH-41. 500.
You can find some. I just want to say this off topic. You can find so many videos of, like, you know, you can they pull these T-34s straight out of the water. You know, they've been sitting down there for, like, you know, 80 years or something like that. You just clean something up and then it starts to go. And yet the German stuff, they have to spend years, you know, carefully, you know, making, you know, machining the parts and everything else like that, babying it and all that to make it work. Whereas, you know, you could find an Su-152 sitting in a barn, you know, put a little bit of oil, you know, put a little bit of gas and oil and there it goes. It's still going, you know. You can find those Su-152s or find like a, you know, something like that, you know. Let me go ahead. Actually, you know what? Let me find one of those. I don't even care about what this boomer has to say. Okay, let me see here. Let me find an Su-152 right quick. I know I can find one. Su-152. Startup. There we go. Oh, yeah. Here we go. This is the one I was thinking of in my head. Yeah, I'll go ahead and show this one. Just right quick. Okay, I'll go ahead and share the screen. I don't think there's anything too... Yeah, there we go. Okay. I'll go ahead and share the audio too. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and do this right here. Yeah. Pepper shot on the AK-47 God tier. Yeah, I agree. Let me see here. Yeah, this is the one I was thinking of, I think. I'll go ahead and find this one. This is the shorter one.
Давай, давай.
Oof.
Я снимаю. Ну. Давай, давай. Ну. О.
Look at that. Straight Slav, right? The power of the Slav, baby. Oh, wow.
Демилитаризация проделана.
Дайте один электрон.
Yeah. I'll get to that. That's a beauty. Imagine seeing this if you're a German soldier. This coming down the street. You're like, oh, shit. Ah!
Ура! Вперед!
Yep. New potato water to clean it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or German civilian. Yeah, true. Yep. Look at that. There you go. Look at that, huh? That just goes to show you, you know, I'm not going to show you a video of one of the German ones. That's just cope. You always see them, though. It's like, well, we took our time. We had to find all these parts from all over the world. And they had to machine their own parts for the German one. It's just such cope. But yeah, let's continue. We'll go ahead and put this back on.
Yard light machine guns.
There we go.
150 Gordiunov SG-43 machine guns and 200 anti-tank rifles. The second major problem with the Soviet infantry in the last stage of the war is its low mobility. There are not enough trucks despite the Lend-Lease deliveries. There are 665,000 trucks available to the army, including 427,000 of American origin for more than 6 million men. For comparison, the US Army can
I was going to say, imagine if
on
Nazgul really happened, huh? Imagine if the Germans and Soviets had actually worked together. Oh my gosh, mind blown, huh?
1 million vehicles of all types. Soviet infantrymen go on foot. Artillery and supplies are largely horse-drawn. We are far from the 100% motorized British and American divisions, able to 300 kilometers in one day. Like its German counterpart, the Soviet Rifle Division cannot be asked for more than 20 kilometers a day. Problem not solved in 1945. The Soviet infantry has nothing to compare to the German Panzerfaust or Panzerschreck, the American bazooka, or even the British Piat. Its anti-tank rifles have never shown great efficiency. And finally, if field communications had greatly improved since 1941, they are still lagging behind those of the Western armies. During the offensive, there is a radio link between the regiment and the division, as well as between the regiment and the battalions. But below that level, the situation is still as bad as before. The battalions and companies communicate by couriers, and the company commander uses hand signals to lead his platoons. Stalin, Zhukov, Konev. Moscow meeting, 1st of April 1945. At about the time Odysee met Guderian at Zossen in late March, preparations...
I'm trying to find Stetsko's works, but it's all monopolized for price, for BS prices by Azov, who call themselves third positions. Oh, yeah. Oh, screw Azov Battalion. Yeah. Like I say, they just had a video from one of those sites that I saw, and they had a march, they had dudes, of course, dressing in their LARP gear, in the wignets that they are. I mean, just embarrassing wing. Like I say, I think that it's funny. A lot of wignets, I think, are smart enough to realize it's like, no, you should not support Ukraine. They are cringe. Because they're just cringe LARPers who are just like, Slava Ukraina, we're fighting for the West or something. We're fighting for Israel. And that's really what it is, too. They're just like, they're wignet boomers. That's what they are. Oof. Just oof. That's all I can say about Azov Battalion. Just oof, yeah. I kind of like all the tanks from that era, or that least, the show. Yeah,
for the Berlin operation were ending in Moscow. A tense atmosphere reigned in the Kremlin. Stalin was convinced that the Germans would do everything possible to reach an agreement with the West, while fighting like mad in the East. The negotiations in Switzerland between the Americans and General Wolf on a ceasefire in northern Italy only confirmed the worst suspicions. Zhukov, who was entrusted with the capture of the German capital, also shared Stalin's fears that the Germans would open the front to the Western Allies. On March 27, 2 days before he flew to Moscow, a Reuters correspondent noted that the British and American units advancing into Germany were encountering virtually no resistance. This report caused great alarm in Moscow. Stalin argued.
Немцы не хотят драться против союзников, а в то же время они подкрепляются против Красной Армии.
Zhukov unfolded the map
I think he was trying a little bit too hard to speak Russian. I'm sorry. He was trying a little too hard, but yeah.
He had bought with the intelligence data on the opposing forces. After Stalin carefully studied it, he asked,
When is it planned to launch an offensive in the Berlin direction?
Zhukov replied,
The troops of the 1st Belarus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Ukraine's extremes are cringe on both sides. All the good ones are too small to do anything. It's sad. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I feel sorry for Ukraine because I think it's a very lovely country. Obviously, it was the breadbasket of, the Soviet Union. I don't know what to say. Yeah. That's why a lot of folks in general don't like to talk about it. And then you have, like I say, I've been on a long enough rant about people like Russell Bentley. He does what he does, but yeah, meh, yeah. You would say love mechanized infantry and the Sherman. Show that alone is weak, but it is never alone. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They are emboldened by the government's actions or lack of action. For example, Russia tank clones. They are almost exclusively for export when they have a lot of Soviet shit with the Soviet era shit with the army. Exactly. Yeah, they still have the AK-74. Yeah, the Russian army still has the AK-74, and they had complicated weapons like the AN-94 that were never going to be used. But yeah, it's true.
The Russian front are ready to march in 2 weeks, and it is obvious that Konyev's 1st Ukrainian front will finish its preparations for the same.
Yeah, Ukraine, yeah, they still have like the T-72 and stuff like that. I mean, they're just,
time. However, Rokossovsky's 2nd Belarusian front is still engaged in heavy fighting against the German strongholds in Poland.
Stalin replied,
Well, we'll have to begin the operation without waiting for Rokossovsky's front.
Then he went to his desk, took a piece of paper and handed it to his interlocutor. According to Zhukov, it was a letter from a foreign source sympathetic to the...
Yeah, SKS I don't know. They're okay. I think that a lot of folks have kind of discovered how the SKSs are, and that's why they're so expensive. They used to be real cheap, but yeah.
USSR, which warned the Soviet leadership about secret negotiations between the Western Allies and the Germans. And although the source's information also said that the Americans and the British rejected the German proposals for a separate peace, nevertheless, the possibility remained that the Germans would open the front to the Western Allies. Stalin asked Zhukov,
Comrade Zhukov, what do you think about this matter?
But without waiting for an answer, he went on.
Roosevelt is unlikely to violate the Yalta agreements. As for Churchill, you can expect anything from this man.
Yeah.
2 days later, on April 1, a decisive meeting was held at the large table in the Kremlin office, over which were hung the portraits of Suvorov and Kutuzov. Marshals Zhukov and Konev were invited, as well as the Chief of the General Staff, General Antonov, and his deputy, General Shlemenko.
Yeah.
Stalin asked both marshals if they were aware of how acute the situation was. Zhukov and Konev prudently replied that they were only as informed as the information at their disposal.
Yeah, that is true, though. That is true. I have seen that last speech that Stalin gave. Yeah, but it's true though. Yeah, he was Georgian. And that's something a lot of folks will talk about. But yeah.
Then the Soviet leader asked Shlemenko.
Hold on, I'll find Stalin's last speech. Let's go ahead and play that right quick. Hold on. Okay, we'll go ahead and put it into context. We'll hear some of this. Why not? There we go. We'll go ahead and add that to the stream. There we go. We'll go ahead and hear a little bit. Yeah.
Разрешите выразить благодарность от имени нашего съезда всем братским партиям и группам, представители которых почтили наш съезд своим присутствием.
Let's see here. We'll play this one because this one the audio is kind of crapola. This is going to be a little bit better.
Братья и сестры в тылу наших врагов, временно подпавшие под иго немецких разбойников, наши славные партизаны и партизанки, разрушающие тылы наших врагов, от имени советского правительства и нашей большевистской партии приветствую.
But yeah, y'all know what I'm saying. Yeah, kiss his homies. Yeah, exactly. Isn't it funded by Israel or something? Yep, they are. Yep, if we're talking about the Azov Battalion, absolutely they are. Mm-hmm. True, yeah. Ukrainian far right nationalism is so ridiculous that it turns their views into pure ridiculousness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Was a Georgian neo-Confederate confirmed? Yeah, exactly. We'll go ahead and put this back on. All right.
Letter to them. This was a message, most likely from Soviet military representatives at the headquarters of the Allied forces. It said that both Montgomery and General Patton would attack Berlin after capturing Leipzig and Dresden. One cannot discount the possibility that there was no such, and that Stalin simply ordered a falsified text and read it to the marshals in order to spur their efforts for the operation. Carefully looked at the marshals and asked,
So, who will take Berlin? We or the Allies?
Konev immediately replied,
We will take Berlin, and we will take it before the Allies.
Stalin looked at Konev with a smile and asked him,
Very well, Comrade Konev. How are you going to prepare your troops for this, since it's necessary for the First Ukrainian Front to carry out a large regrouping of forces?
There is no need to worry about this, Comrade Stalin. The front is definitely able to carry out all the necessary measures in time.
Stalin's
Confederate beaten
eyes
enough.
could
Yeah,
not
exactly.
escape Konev's frank desire to get ahead of Zhukov and take Berlin first. The Soviet leader was satisfied. He never missed an opportunity to create an atmosphere of rivalry between his subordinates, and if this could win the war even quicker for him, all the better. This set the stage for the last act of the war, the capture of Berlin, to follow in the next episode.
Ooh, there you go. Very good, though. I like that. That was a good breakdown of a lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat biased because they got the Anglo stuff, but still, that's pretty good. Yeah. Devor rifles are from, Ukrainian company. Yeah, they got the contract before the Euromaidan. The oligarch that originally funded them was Jewish but had financial interest in the East. Are you referring? I'm trying to think of his name now. Not Zelensky. I'm trying to think of it. Kolomoisky. That's it. Yeah, Kolomoisky. Kolomoisky is the one that really has the power because even Zelensky is controlled by Kolomoisky, who is Ukrainian but also lives in Israel. Yeah, it's wild stuff with that sort of thing, you know. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this one now. We'll go ahead and be polite since Christian Dissident wanted to do it. Yeah, they were backed by Soros. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the horseshoe theory. They're tied with Casa Pound, to who support the idea of one indivisible Russia. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this one now. All right, so this is what was the Shah of Iran, a brutal dictator. All right. Nope, sorry.
That the Islamic Revolution took place. But how true is that? In this video, I want to show you the extent of the hostility of some Iranians towards the Pahlavi dynasty. I often ask myself whether so much hatred, contempt, hostility, and envy are even necessary. Therefore, I am convinced that instead of demonizing these kings and making them the most terrible dictators of all time, we should look back into history to see whether the Pahlavi kings were really that bad or not. But before we jump in, we need some context first. So at the beginning of the 20th century, Iran, or as it was known back then, Persia, was an absolute monarchy ruled by the Turkic Qajar dynasty. This situation, however, changed in 1906 when the Constitutional Revolution brought forward the parliamentary monarchy with a constitution, thus ending the absolute monarchy. August 5, 1906
Homosexual,
was
yeah.
a very big day in Iran.
Shah
Because on that
apologized.
day, the King
Yeah,
Muzaffer
exactly.
ad-Din Shah signed the
Yeah.
first Iranian constitution. The constitutional revolution was a major step towards legitimizing popular sovereignty and limiting the power of the clerics and of the Shiite clergy. For the first time, citizens can have a say in their country's politics. They elect the legislative, that is the law-giving power, the assembly.
Boy.
They can vote directly on laws via referendums, and they also elect the Senate. The members of the assembly see themselves above all as controllers of the government. They propose the prime minister and control government finances. The government, which consists of the prime minister and his cabinet, depends on the confidence of the assembly. If the assembly casts a vote of no confidence against the minister or the prime minister, then they must resign. The Shah in this parliamentary monarchy still plays a role. The Shah can dissolve the assembly and have it re-elected. He is the commander-in-chief of the army, he can propose laws, and he can decide on war and peace. The Shah also appoints the ministers and the prime minister. As for the prime minister, he can order a referendum on laws he does not like. All this sounds fine, but this is only the theoretical view, because the situation in which the backward Iranian society of that time found itself was far from a right to use popular sovereignty. For once the fever of the constitutional revolution was over, it did not take long until anti-constitutionalists gathered at the imperial court to rewrite the constitution in their favor. The Shiite clergy, who
Where's
saw
the part
secular
where you get
constitution as
where
a
we get
threat,
your oil
and
exactly?
the new
Yeah.
Qajar King Muhammad Ali Shah, who was throughout
Revolution also most of the day.
opposed the
You got a
constitution,
playlist exposing
they
most of the
joined
day.
forces and
Yeah,
decided to
I'm
reassert
sure.
the
Like I say,
power
well,
of the court and its positions by using so-called supplements to the constitution to reverse all the liberal goals, assassination of some constitutionalists, and the shelling of the parliament by cannons on the order of officially adopted, effectively deleting all the secular and liberal aims of the constitutional movement. In
What a
this
bum.
constitution,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Shia clergy now enjoys special rights. Shia Islam is made the official religion of the state, and non-Sharia compliant laws are not allowed to be passed. The Shiite clergy has oversight over public life and thus can override civil rights. The freedom of the press, the freedom of the person, the right to study what you want, to found associations, and the freedom of the speech. These are indeed dictatorial powers that the clergy now has. And so, the more the constitution emphasizes the role of the people, the more extra paragraphs were added to strengthen the role of Islam and the clergy. Thus, political, social, and cultural freedom.
Let's be careful about. You're talking about Shia Islam, and like I say, oh boy, let's be careful, man.
That contradict Islam and the Sharia are restricted.
Needs to watch more memory. Exactly.
The divine rights of kings were restricted by the people, the more the rights of the people were restricted by the Shiite clergy. Therefore, the legalized foundation of the religious apartheid was laid in the constitution. Now, of course, the question arises of why are the Pahlavi kings then called dictators when the constitution indeed limited.
Well, because they were puppets of the U.S. That's why.
Their power. The thing is, not only had the Qajar sworn an oath to protect and preserve this constitution, which had nothing of the spirit of freedom and democracy in it, as I already
I'll be right back.
but also the Pahlavi swore an oath to protect and to preserve it. So when in 1925 Reza Shah Pahlavi, or as he was known back then, Reza Khan, overthrew the Qajar dynasty and became the emperor of Iran, the constitution and the parliament still existed, but with them existed one problem. Democracy is only as good as the education system that surrounds it, and the Iran of the early century was far away from making a use of the right of popular sovereignty.
Yes, I will do them tonight.
Iran of then had a large illiterate population and looked very different from the Iran we see today. A democracy needs a population that is educated and knows what is best for the country, which is why many uncivilized countries in the early 20th century were ruled by educated monarchs or authoritarian strongmen, rather.
Okay. Let's go through this here. Okay. Ataturk was gay, but he did make things a little bit better for Turkey in general. Let's see here. Abdel Nasser. No. Don't talk shit about my man Nasser. Come on now. Say what you will about Pakistan. This is okay. This sounds like cope. This guy's coping. Okay.
Than democratic governments. To demonstrate you how ineffective the liberal government in Iran was, when in 1921 Reza Khan was appointed Minister of War, Iran was plagued by constant civil wars. Local militias, including revolutionaries who refused to surrender their weapons after the 1906 constitutional revolution, as well as local bandits, roamed freely across the country. And when Parliament refused to fund Reza Khan's campaign to quell down rebellions, he had to enter politics, one way or the other, eventually leading to his seizure of power 4 years later. If you want to modernize an uncivilized country rapidly as a ruler, you need to rule with a free hand. And as I already mentioned, the Iranian constitution not only limited the powers of the people, but also that of the king. And so Reza Shah circumvented this barrier not by limiting the powers of the clergy, which the constitution expressly prohibited anyway, but by passing laws which increased his own powers.
Liberal equals good.
Enabled him to do what the former Qajar kings and the parliament could not.
Go to Gulag,
namely
monarch.
defending
Yeah,
Persia's
exactly.
sovereignty.
Yeah.
Now that we have clarified how democracy failed in Iran, we turn to the question of whether the Pahlavi kings were bloodthirsty dictators or not. But before we jump in, I want to repeat it once more.
They weren't bloodthirsty tyrants. They were fucking puppets.
The Iranian constitution was not democratic, and the Pahlavi kings never claimed to be democrat. I say this so that no one is under the illusion that the Pahlavi kings somehow destroyed democracy in Iran when it never existed there in the first place. With this in mind, let us take a closer look. Throughout the Pahlavi era, none of Iran's neighbors, except Israel, which was established later, was democratically ruled.
Bruh. Nope. Stop right there. Nope. You have lost all credibility. Democracy in Israel, bro. There's a democracy in Israel. Yeah, democracy for who? Yeah. Let's take it easy on that. I don't think people like people like Menachem Begin were actually they didn't love democracy.
Historical characteristics of these countries, the bipolar world of the time and the fragile situation in the region simply did not allow it. Even though the Pahlavi dynasty was not democratic, neither were their opponents. The opposition was primarily made of communists who wanted to form a proletariat dictatorship like the USSR, and the Islamists led by Khomeini who wanted to have a Sharia state just like the today's Islamic Republic of Iran. Ergo, like the Pahlavi kings, their opponents were also not Democrats. The only difference being that the Pahlavi kings were very dedicated and energetic in serving the country's sovereignty in economic, cultural, and social fields. But their opponents, I'm talking about the Islamists and communists, not only did they do not understand them, did not recognize their services, but they started fighting these kings with all their might and defamed and discredited them. The thing is, the Pahlavis, unlike the absolute Qajars, did not use their powers to enrich themselves, but to modernize their country. Now we have talked so much about the constitution and it not being democratic. What about Muhammad Reza Shah? Wasn't he a brutal dictator? No, not really. If we look at the definition of a dictator, we see that a dictator is generally believed to be with total power over a country, typically one who has
a lot of cope. Nobody says that the Shah of Iran was a dictator. They say that he was a puppet. I'm going to repeat that word. He was a puppet. He was, his strings were controlled by the U.S. This guy didn't even give Turkey a chance. No, he really didn't. Meanwhile, Bibi Netanyahu has been in power since the mid-1990s. Exactly. Mud democracy.
Obtained control by force. Did the Shah have total control over the country? No, he did not, especially since he had sworn to a constitution that did not provide him with such opportunities, especially against the powers of the clergy. If you remember the so-called Supplementary Act to the Constitution, you would know that Shia Islam was the official religion of the country and the king had to protect it at all costs. Now let us go to our second question. Did the Shah of Iran seize power by force, like a dictator? No, the Shah of Iran was the Shah of Iran before and after the so-called 1953 coup d'etat, which, to be precise, cannot be a coup since a king cannot make a coup against himself. That
a coup
makes sense, doesn't it? If not, check out my Mossadegh documentary.
I don't care.
Anyway, the Shah was the prince and became king once his father had abdicated. When the parliament approved Reza Shah's abdication, Muhammad Reza swore the oath of allegiance to the Quran before parliament and took over the affairs of government as Shah from September 17, 1941. No bloodshed, no violence.
This guy would probably ask why Pu Yi wasn't the leader of China. Come on now. Get the fuck out of here.
Sure, Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was an authoritarian ruler, but he was definitely not a dictator, as he did not meet the criteria of the definition of a dictator, so this designation is simply wrong. On top of that, the bond between the monarchy and the clergy has been inseparable throughout Persian history, so even if the Pahlavi kings wanted to, they could never sever that bond. Nevertheless, the Pahlavi kings defied the clerics by achieving many of the goals of the constitutional revolution. For example, civil rights, especially for women and religious minorities, economic growth, and the abolition of feudalism.
Are you gonna post those videos of Iran before the revolution? Oh my gosh, look at that. They were all westernized. That's so cool, bro. They're just like everybody else. Man, that's so cool. Are you serious?
The religious and cultural freedom of the Pahlavi dynasty had not only mobilized the superstitious and backward clerics.
This is literally like neocon talking points here, where it's just like, well, we got women's rights, bro. We got the women's rights. Can't talk about anything else. I mean, Jesus wept. Go ahead.
like Khomeini against them, who demanded that the Shah should reverse the rights of women and minorities.
The Shah
but
nationalized
also provoked
oil,
many of
had
the
some
so-called
falling out with the
intellectuals
West.
and
Yeah, that's
political
true. Yeah.
opponents,
He overlooked the
including
whole
the
CIA
Ba'athists.
Baku thing.
Now,
Yeah, exactly.
when we hear of the Shah of Iran, Western media depicts us a picture of millions
Superman,
of
it's
political
no, it's Ottoman.
draconian torture, and the notorious secret police Savak. But how true are these accusations? It is true that Iran had a secret service that was founded in the 1950s to combat communist and Islamist movements within the country. A secret police had already been established under Prime Minister Mossadegh. However, took years before a real intelligence service was founded in Iran. The idea of establishing a secret service in Iran.
What leftists don't want you to see. Royalist protests against Mossadegh's illegal coup d'etat. Why does this matter? No one gives a shit. Okay.
Iran arose in talks with the US, Israel, and Great Britain 1 year after the fall of Mossadegh, and so the bill to establish the Savak passed the Iranian Senate on January 20, 1957, and the Iranian Parliament on March 14, 1957. Originally, the Americans stationed in Iran were not involved in these plans. Only later was Colonel Giraud assigned by the US to help to set up such an organization. The numbers of political prisoners during the Shah's reign often exaggerated, obviously with the intention to demonize the Shah. For example, Amnesty International talks about 100,000 political prisoners. Idea how ridiculous these accusations are. On the eve of World War II, concentration camps in Nazi Germany held around
are you really going to make that comparison? Are you really? Okay.
5,000 political prisoners. So, if the most oppressive regime on earth, namely Nazi Germany, in 1939, with a population of 86 million, held around 25,000 political prisoners, how realistic is it that Iran in 1976, with a population of 30 million people, held around 100,000 political prisoners? Why
oh my goodness, what are you doing?
Satellite pictures?
Oh, here we go. Mo Uyghurs. There we go. Mo Uyghurs. The Uyghurs, bro. Look at what they're doing. We found some buildings, bro. The Uyghurs. Oh, this guy is coping. Oh my goodness. This guy's overdosing on copium.
Concentration camps in Iran made in this period. I tell you why. Because these numbers are fabricated. To give you a more realistic picture, according to Parviz Sabedi, deputy director of Savak, there were 3,200 political prisoners in Iran as of 1976.
It's been said that there are some 20,000 political prisoners in Iran.
That's not true. We have about 3,000 and not more. Some people have even said that there are between 25,000 and 100,000 political prisoners.
You deny this?
Do I deny it? First of all, it's our business and not any of their business. But the truth, the reality is that we have not more than 3,000.
That intelligence agencies like the MI6 or the CIA use violence to achieve some
Germany's
of their
better
goals
shot
is
back to
no
Iran.
secret. And certainly Savak had also used violence. The CIA's long history of interrogation methods show the US paying lip service to international agreements in the fields of human rights, while at the same time violently torturing whenever circumstances make it seem necessary for them to do so. The Kubark manual reveals only a few hints of scruples in the 128 pages of this horror manual in a rare euphemism of external techniques. We are not sure whether a copy of the Kurbak manual was ever actually given to Savak, but we know that the core of the content was given to the Iranian organization. Towards the end of the 1960s, however, Savak used more of the sophisticated methods it had learned from the CIA and the Israeli intelligence service Shabak. The Shah probably saw the shift to sophisticated methods as a further proof of Iran's modernity, and these more subtle methods were promoted several times to exonerate the Savak from accusations.
So hold on. So he admits that he pretty much undoes this whole thing where it's just like, well, Savak wasn't that bad, but they may have used techniques from the CIA, but that's not bad. They work with Israel too, so it's cool, bro.
Of cruelty, as we see here.
Does torture happen
Exactly.
in Iran?
Well, this is a question that was put to me more than once, and which I don't like at all.
Oh, you don't like it?
Because it's so ridiculous that I don't have to answer that. But for the sake of this interview, I will say that we don't have to torture people. This is the way that unsophisticated organizations were doing things. We are as sophisticated as you are now.
Sophisticated in methods of interrogation.
Yes.
However, it is also very likely that the Shah was never told the details of Savak's method, and probably no attempt was ever made to inform him of them, as a 1980 television interview by David Frost with the Shah showed.
When did people first tell you that torture was going on in Iran?
In matter of fact, we heard it mostly from the outside. In the inside, they would never come to me and say, well, sir, we have tortured this fellow to make him talk. No, that was not my business. That was not my job.
In this interview, Frost nails the Shah on the word petty details when he said he had more important things to do than listen to individual interrogation reports. The Shah was furious at the allegations of torture and cruelty he was accused of, as his relationship with Savak at most was formal, as we see here.
You don't have responsibility for everything that goes on in a country when you are the king of kings.
I was receiving the head of the security, say, twice a week for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And he will have his reports on important things to me, not just petty details like that. To come and report, for instance, on Afghanistan, for instance. Or deep penetration of, or at least trying to penetrate deeply of
in the U.S. went there. Yeah, we did.
Mullahs, organization outside, this and that. But he wouldn't come to me and say that yesterday we have tortured this fellow or that fellow.
Damage that it did to the image of your country, and given the fact that I don't know of any defense of it, I don't think, with respect, that it turned out to be petty or was petty. But I can see if you're running...
Yes, you are right in that sense.
Okay, this is gay. I don't care about this. Okay, let's go ahead and skip to the end. Well, let's skip to the political freedom in Iran. Let's get to that bullshit.
Iran was never...
Oh, hold on. Whoa. What's that? What was that?
Interrogation method. So basically, the Americans demonized the Shah for what they themselves were doing the whole time. Now, you might say, hold on, but I do not remember President Ronald Reagan imprisoning political opponents. Look, Iran was never a perfect democracy, nor did it claim to be one. Second, the Shah was told by his officers that most of the prisoners were terrorists, rather political dissidents, as we can see here.
That almost anybody who opposed you ended up being called enemy of the state, when they may not have been.
As I said, that might be true. But these same people today, where are they? Are they the friends of the state? Or they are in hiding or outside the country? It's always a tendency to compare our country,
Panama offshore services, tax-free zones, exactly.
Perfect democracies of the world. I don't mind that. But now what we hear is, let's try to understand these people.
That's how they act too.
Islam is something special when what they are doing is absolutely contrary to Islam. Everybody is trying to say, well, let's try to understand.
Oh, that's funny. NoMullahs.com. Give me a break. Oh my gosh.
These people are killing, massacring others, the people they don't like, just like flies. But in my case, is to compare it to the most perfect government of the world.
Iran undoubtedly was not a perfect society, and therefore we should not have accepted its government to be perfect as well. After all, these very
Nobody's expecting perfection. The thing is, though, is that the Shah just didn't play by the rules. That's the whole thing, is that the Shah, you know, got overtaken. And like I said, there's plenty of stuff that goes on that says the Iranian Revolution was backed by the CIA. I mean, who knows at this point? But it's just like, what are you going to do about it? I don't, yeah, it's crazy.
people who criticized their king for being authoritarian were the ones who created, following the revolution, an Islamic dictatorship that is a totalitarian, if not worse than that of the Shah. In a society where Islam proposes and promotes torture, in a society where corporal punishment of children is part of the education and the teacher's stick is called a flower and respected, one should not wonder that state officials act with all brutality against civilians without the Shah knowing it, let alone ordering it. Once you realize how primitive and backward the Iranian society back then was, you will no longer wonder why the constitutional revolution was not democratic.
Oh, please. The thing is, notice that he said back then, because now look at Iran. The thing is that Iran now is a fairly, straightforward society. Now, of course, there are problems there too. Let's not, I'm not going to sit here and praise everything that, the Republic of, Islam Republic of Iran does. But it's like, shoot, what were you going to do about it?
Why the Shah never claimed to be a democrat, why the Iranian opposition was also dictatorial, and why for these anti-Shah protesters, the word freedom basically meant our own version of dictatorship. To make it short, liberal democracy cannot function without an educated middle class, and the Pahlavi dynasty...
yes. We need a middle class. Okay.
Despite being autocratic, had built the visible and civilized basis to achieve a democracy. But their dictatorial opponents could not use this new atmosphere for their roles.
But apparently Nasser was a dictator to him. Ataturk was a dictator. It's like they improved their societies too. Gosh dang. What a bunch of cope.
That they sought Khomeini. The truth is, it does not matter which ideology the Pahlavi kings followed and what thoughts they had or even what rules they followed. Important is what they did, namely the foundation of the modern Iranian state, achieving full sovereignty, economic boom, prosperity, and ending the medieval Islamic society which existed during the Qajar era. That's it on my part. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Until next time.
Whatever, loser. Let's go ahead and hear this cope.
I did criticize the president because of our undercutting of what was a stalwart ally, the Shah of Iran. And I am not at all convinced that he was that far out of line with his people, or that they wanted that to happen.
Oh, shut up, Reagan.
The Shah had done our bidding and carried our load in the Middle East for quite some time.
The Shah had done our bidding. Yeah, that really works, doesn't it? Go ahead.
And I did think that it was a blot on our record that we let him down. Have things gotten better?
Yeah.
The Shah, whatever he might have done, was building low-cost housing, had taken land away from the mullahs and was distributing it to the peasants so they could be landowners, things of that kind. But we turned it over to a maniacal fanatic who has slaughtered thousands and thousands of people, calling it executions. The
cope. I see a lot of cope in that, yeah. Boomer cons love this guy. Yeah, they do. They really do. They love that guy. They do. It's unbelievable. Oh man, yeah. It's hard to be an unironic puppet for a long time. Nobody likes me. Exactly. This goes to show the CIA in the end is incompetent as hell. They really are, yeah. The dictatorship that was based more than the Shah, who was cringe. Yeah, this guy sings bomb, 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 Iran. Exactly. I bet he's seething at the Iran-China deal. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Wilson. Yeah, worst president. Yeah, Reagan, the cringiest president. Yeah, looking at the guy who slaughtered my people by the tens of thousands. Yeah, there you go. Reagan was a scumbag. Yeah. Hold on. What we got here? Young Pharaoh is not a race grifter and certainly not a political grifter. You don't seem that familiar with. I'm perfectly familiar with young Pharaoh. I remember when he used to say white people were, white people aren't human, this and that. I don't care. He is a grifter. The thing is, why do you think he has these big, activity, these big old speeches? Okay, yeah, that's cool. I don't even feel like answering that. That's gay. That's ridiculous, bro. No, man. You really gonna do that to me, bro? No, I don't think you are. Okay. Yeah. I think that's about it for the strength. Yeah, Reagan was an actor. He was. Yep, he was. I don't think there's that much else to cover I wanted to say here. Yeah. Yeah. Throw the Reaganite down the well so so my country can be free. Exactly. Absolute cringe. Yep, he's got to go outside. Yep. Second. I'll let him in.
Alrighty. Having fun, Joe?
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
Oh, she's in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gad, not heads.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and end it here then. Yeah. I was going to try to make a more nicer exit, but yeah. I always get the double audio, so I think I'll just go ahead and let me go ahead and unplug my mic. We'll just go ahead and do that. But see you later, and a goodbye.